Professor Steiner here, and what I'd like to do at this point is give you some suggestions that will help you in training on your own at home or wherever you go to practice with the instructional material that we offer. Uh, it's not as difficult as you might think. If you were to want to learn a classical, traditional martial art, you would be well advised to have the guidance of a teacher because every style is very, very specific and exact. They have intricate moves, very complex techniques, and a fixed way of doing things that has not changed since the art originated. This is close combat and self-defense. The American Combato system is both an established curriculum and it's flexible as you learn it. You can adapt what you learn to yourself. So I'm going to give you a game plan to follow, instructing you how to work out on your own using the instructional videos that you'll be able to obtain from this site. The first thing to keep in mind is you're an individual. You're not part of a class, and that's actually an advantage. It's like taking private lessons, which for decades I've been giving to students. Private lessons constitute the best way to learn. Now, the best way to train once you've learned something would be with a private coach, which very few people can afford, and you don't have a private coach, you have yourself. You are your own coach. And if you follow the instructions I give you, you'll make outstanding, excellent progress, and you'll be very satisfied with the results. I guarantee that. The first thing to keep in mind when setting up a program, it has to be realistic for you. What is your time schedule? If you work and go to school, if you have very limited time, or if you just have a very heavy work schedule or a very heavy school schedule, or if you're in your 80s, or if you are physically debilitated in some way. As little as 15 or 20 minutes a day can be enough to get a valuable amount of practice in if you practice assiduously and seriously. You focus your mind, make it real for yourself when you're practicing, and you'll find that that's more than enough. Now, ideally, I recommend that students practice 30 minutes a day, every single day. And when I say every single day, I mean that. I mean 7 days a week. The exception being if you are ill. If you are ill, you should not do any physical training. You should use your strength and your reserves to recover. But assuming you're not ill, you haven't been injured, there's no emergency, 30 minutes a day is a good practice schedule. 45 minutes a day is much better. No more than 1 hour a day. And the reason I say that, it's easy to focus on something that you're interested in for an hour. It's very difficult. After an hour, you start getting bored, you start getting tired. And that's why I really recommend as a mandate 30 minutes a day, because anybody can focus on something for 30 minutes and you can get a lot of work done in that period of time. But if you're that interested, set your training schedule no more than 1 hour per practice session. Now, when you're doing this for an hour, you don't need to practice 7 days a week. 4 days a week will be more than enough. 3 days a week will do. Every other day, space the days. Don't do 2-3 days together. Give yourself a break between. On the alternate days, you can do some weight training, which is very valuable. I certainly urge it and recommend it. We'll be discussing that at another time, but suffice it to say that weight training sensibly done, no steroids, no fad diets, no muscle pumping, no posing, no emphasis on getting the biggest biceps in your county, none of that nonsense, but sensible weight training is very valuable and the most important and valuable physical training any combative student can use. Okay, when you set aside your time, you fix it at certain times per day, you want to balance out your practice. Now remember, in the beginning, when you start off, it's easy to be very enthusiastic. Almost everybody is when they start studying anything, whether it's a foreign language, mountain climbing, self-defense, polo, snooker, checkers, chess, whatever it is. If you first learn something or you're first getting involved in something you're interested in, you want to do it a lot. Guard against that. You should finish your training sessions with a sense that you could do more, that you want to do more, with a little bit of enthusiasm. And you save that for the next session. Boredom will inevitably take place because you must train perpetually. You want to continue to train. Now, the boredom you start to feel after you've been training properly for a few months can easily be overcome with some rigorous self-discipline. But if you overdo it for your first and second and third session, and then you get bored, you're just going to quit, and that's no good. That's the way most people start the martial arts. If you've been a student in martial arts schools, you know the dropout rate is tremendously high. Well, you're not going to learn anything of value if you drop out. You want to stick with this. Make it a habit. Make it a lifestyle. You're going to give this much regularly to your training, to your practice, so that over time you really become proficient enough to satisfy your needs and your goals. Once you've set up your training schedule, you want to balance out what you do. Now, the core techniques in the American Combato system, in the unarmed combat section, and we do use weapons. We use sticks, we use knives, we use walking sticks, we use guns. But talking now for the unarmed combat, we'll get to the weapons much later. Unarmed combat, you have three primary segments of study: basics, attack combinations, and counterattacks. Counterattacks are the self-defense moves. What do you do if somebody's choking you? What do you do if somebody's going to punch you? These are reactive techniques, and in fact, of course, that you want to be able to preempt. You don't want things to get to the point where you are taken by surprise, but the counterattacks are for that eventuality. Well, as you study the white belt level, you'll notice you've got 8 basic blows, 4 attack combinations, and 12 counterattacking actions that are done with variations. You don't have to practice once you've learned all of those techniques at every given session. Once you get through the white, yellow, green, purple belt levels, you can't practice everything you've learned every time you practice, unless you're a robot and you have nothing to do all day long but practice. It's ridiculous. There's too many techniques. So what you do is you break down your techniques so that you practice a segment one day, another segment another day, another segment another day, another segment another day, and that 4 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 segments covers, or 7 segments, covers all of what you've done. That's very easy to do. And you can work that with the entire system. When you do this, you want to make sure that you cycle through all of what you have learned once per week. By doing that, you'll be getting an adequate review, and it will be a meaningful review that will contribute to, over time, establishing everything you've done as reflex action. These are very simple moves. You're not going to be doing anything complicated. But even so, you have to practice it regularly. Once a week, you want to cycle through everything. Now, in the beginning, let's say all you've learned is the chin jab, the chop, and the knee attack, and one combination and 1 or 2 counterattacks. Well, then you can practice everything in one session. It's not a problem. It's very simple, as a matter of fact, because there's not that much to practice. But what I'm saying is, as you acquire more techniques, don't be in a hurry to acquire techniques. Take your time. Start off with everything you learn with the body relaxed and doing it in relatively slow motion. Don't start off with a full power chin jab. Make sure your elbow's in close to your body. Make sure the formation of your hand is correct. Make sure you're visualizing properly. Make sure you get your body behind it correctly. Make sure you use that falling step well. Now, once you got that down, now you start adding speed and power. This is the way you want to approach the combinations, which will take a little bit more effort because there's more to each combination. But there's only 4 at white belt level. There are fewer attack combinations than there are basic blows, than there are counterattacks. Because when you are able to preempt, you don't need that much. Although there are plenty of variations to suit everyone, and eventually you're going to learn the process of developing your own. So you set aside for a practice session a certain number of basics, or as I said in the beginning, all of the basics. And you practice those. You take maybe 1 or 2 attack combinations, and you practice those. And you take 2 or 3 counterattacks, and you practice those. Next session, you take different basics, different attack combinations, different counterattacks. And you progress that way, adding new material all the time, but always keeping a practice session within the bounds of an hour. Always. Always. For psychological as well as technical reasons. You don't want to make practice an activity that takes a chunk out of your day and forbids you from doing anything else. Most of us have to work for a living. And you spend a lot of time at work. If you have a family, I think they would appreciate you spending some time with them. If you go to school, there's the classes, there's homework, and you may also have a job. So all of these things have to be taken into consideration, and don't become a fanatic. The people who do the best are people who stick with it over time and apportion a manageable amount of time for their practice sessions. The people who do the best are not those who plunge in, spend all day training, and the next day training, and the next day training, and finally, by the end of the week, their tongue is hanging out, and they're ready to collapse, and they want to go out to a bar and get drunk. This is not the way to become an expert. When you practice, how you practice is very important. Now, you'll notice we don't employ warm-up exercises for a very good reason. You don't need them. When you do these techniques, you start off with a few easy repetitions. The body gets warmed up. Now, of course, if you're coming from having been indolent all day long, you haven't moved, and you're stiff as a board, do 5 or 10 minutes of jumping jacks, push-ups, sit-ups, and do a few exercises, stretch a little bit. Don't stretch too much. Extreme stretching is bad for the body. And you can warm up if you have to, but no, most people, you're warmed up from your day's activities. Just start doing the techniques. Start off easily and build up to hard, powerful, viciously effective repetitions as you practice. If you're physically exhausted one day, you won't feel a rising energy as you practice. If you're lazy, which you may be at the beginning of a workout, the first few minutes of practicing at a reduced level will start the blood flowing, get you limbered up, and you'll feel enthusiasm. If you're genuinely tired, then you won't feel more like training as you begin to train. In fact, you'll feel worse and be guided by that. If for some reason you were digging ditches for 8 preceding hours, or you were building a house or laying a roof or doing something unusual that demanded your energy and your time and that left you really beat, okay, that day take a rest. But be honest with yourself. Find out if it's laziness. Find out. And if you know it is, if you feel, well, you know, I could try something, let me see how I feel. Go ahead and do it. See how you feel. Get started. Do some movements. Your energy will rise, your enthusiasm will rise if it is mere laziness. But if it's not, you're getting a warning from your body. It needs rest. Pay attention to that warning and rest. When I'm teaching classes, I will not, if a student comes in and that student is exhausted or has had something happen during the day and he just is at tremendously reduced capacity, I won't let him train. I had this happen once many years ago with a student who came in and he was not feeling well. I wouldn't let him train. I sent him home. Because you don't benefit by hurting yourself. The body benefits from training when it's able to train. And most of the time, thank God, you'll be able to train. So train. Adjust your energy output level to suit your energy level of the day. Some days you'll be able to train, you'll want to train, but you won't be as strong or have as much energy as you will on another day. Okay, respect that. You're a class of one. You don't have to keep up with anybody else. I tell this to students in a group class. You don't have to keep up with anybody else. Keep up with yourself. Be honest with yourself. When you can push, push. Don't hold back. If you're full of energy one day and you can train to the limit, go for it. Train to the limit. Do it. It'll benefit you. And usually after you do that, the next practice session is going to be a little lighter. Maybe not. Maybe you're 18 years old and you have unlimited energy. Okay, fine. Go for it. But if you're 85 years old, take it easy. In addition to balancing out what you do so that every practice session focuses on a group of skills that you don't follow an encyclopedic effort. You balance it out throughout a week of training. Always focus on visualization. Now, all of the counterattack techniques can be practiced without a partner. All of the attack combinations, all of the basics. Now, it is very helpful to practice the counterattacks with a partner, of course. But you don't have to be as careful when you're working without a partner. When you're hitting a dummy or a heavy bag or training in the air. It's what goes on up here that counts. Shadow boxing. Fairbairn called it shadow fighting. Same thing. And this is the way commandos were trained. In addition to doing some techniques with partners, they did an awful lot of solo practice. Visualization is absolutely required, or you will not get the same amount of benefit that you could. Remember this, the human nervous system does not distinguish and cannot distinguish between actually experienced and vividly imagined events in which you participate. The proof of this is obvious. Just refer to your dreams. Remember waking up after a bad dream and sweating and feeling bad? Your body reacted to that visualization that your dream provided. You may have wakened up laughing at something or feeling good. Well, why? Because your body's reaction to what your mind created was the same as it would have been if instead of a creation of your mind, you had gone through an actually lived through experience. This is why visualization is so critical. This is why I use self-hypnosis programs, which are available to you if you want them. And I've used hypnosis with students personally. Your mind controls your body, as it should. When you train, don't just throw a front kick. Imagine somebody in front of you who wants to kidnap your child. Kick him. That's the way you want to think. This guy's pulling a knife. Kick him. Guy's hand comes up to punch you. Kick him. This is the way you want to practice your techniques. So that every practice session, insofar as it is possible for it to be, becomes a lived-through series of events during which you are applying your techniques for real. Now, after day after day after day after week after week after month after year of doing this, your body and mind associate any similar happening as a triggering mechanism for those skills, which is what you want. It's very dangerous to practice with a partner carelessly. And this, when you are working with a partner, I caution you. You can't call back a mistake. Whether you're practicing with a firearm or you're practicing unarmed combat, caution is absolutely vital. It doesn't take much to seriously injure someone you're practicing with. And one thing I pride myself on is I've been teaching now well over 55 years. I have never hurt a student. I'm proud of that. I don't want to hurt a student. Rex Applegate, Charlie Nelson, Maury Geyer, the three best instructors I ever had of close combat, never hurt me. I never left an instructional session with any of them with an injury. or feeling anything hurt. It was great. I never left a jiu-jitsu class without black and blue marks, and 90% of what I learned there was useless. Often in Taekwondo, we had accidental injuries, inadvertent contact. I'm not complaining about that. That's part of the game. I mean, you could leave anytime you want. I didn't want to leave, I wanted to learn. But my point is that good techniques, the stuff that you want to use if, God forbid, your life or the life of a loved one is in danger, you can't do on somebody else for recreation. You could hit a punching bag, you could hit a dummy, and I certainly recommend. My highest marks at present go to the Bob XL dummy. And I don't get any money for saying this. I don't, I have no commercial interest here. This is just what I found to be the most practical. I suppose you could make your own dummies if you want. I have a fighting man dummy in my training area, and it's good, but it's not as good as the Bob XL. A striking post is very valuable. You can practice kicking against that. You can practice hand and elbow strikes. A padded tree, a heavy bag, but not your practice partner. If you discover as you begin to work with someone, they're a little over exuberant. Well, at first you could tell a person, look, calm down, let's go more easily. If they don't do it, one warning, they're out. You don't practice with them anymore. You don't play with a weapon. You don't play with a weapon. This is a weapon. Everything that you learn in American Combato, with the sole exception being the black belt jiu-jitsu techniques that are taught to police officers, for police officers. Everything you learn is designed to teach you to deal with a dangerous, violent attacker or attackers, or armed attacker, to save your life, to protect your loved ones. This is not for sport. This is not for play. This is not a game. This is not a joke. You do not play with this. Caution is important. Full blast on any training dummies or training devices in the air. Go for broke. That's where it's appropriate. When you're working with a partner, I know I've emphasized this very strongly because I'm very concerned with safety. You don't want to hurt someone. You don't want to be hurt by someone. So when you practice with a partner, easy does it. Now this is an overview of how you should practice. If you follow it, I think you'll do very, very, very well. I wish you good luck and success. Whether you have that success, though, is going to be up to you. We've got all the materials here. It's up to you to use them right. Thank you.